I'm Heather.
And I'm Desiree.
And you're listening to
the Perpetually Overdue podcast.
Well, welcome to our very first episode of Perpetually Overdue podcast. Hello, Desiree.
Hello, Heather. How are you feeling? First one. It's official.
The nerves are nerving, but I think we're going to be able to move past that pretty quickly, especially with today's topic. It is one that I have been waiting to talk about. What about you? How are you feeling?
I'm excited to kind of dive in and really chew on all the facets of this fantastic topic that is very relevant, both in history and currently right now.
Speaking of current events, we've had an interesting couple of weeks, have we not? In America, in the world, and then obviously personally for the two of us. For those who've been sleeping under a rock, we recently had an election, and I know that that topic is extremely controversial. I will just first and foremost start out by saying that both Desiree and we are bipartisan.
And for our listeners, she meant nonpartisan.
Meaning we do not favor or are loyal to any specific side. Politics is a very divisive, dirty game, and we know that people on both sides play that game, and that we know that there are flaws, really big flaws on both sides. But obviously, with our two-party system, we have to choose one or the other. And a lot of the times when you go into the polls, it feels like, and you can agree or disagree, Desiree, it feels like you're choosing the lesser of two evils.
At least in recent years, unfortunately, yes, it definitely has felt. You have to think of the bigger picture and choose the lesser of two evils, definitely.
Yeah, so whether you agree or disagree with somebody's vote, that's not what we're talking about today.
No.
But we do want to start off by saying that for us, the result of the elections was less than satisfactory, and we have been feeling all sorts of emotions from, for me personally, devastation, confusion, anger, trying to combat feelings of hopelessness. What about you? How has this election made you feel?
All those that you've mentioned, and fear. Fear was a major one for me. Fear of my safety as a woman, fear of my health. I already struggle with finding proper medical support and help, and wondering what that's going to look like, because my chronic conditions deal with my female reproductive system. Fear of, I live currently somewhere where there may be a lot of immigration issues that come up. And so there could be a lot of unrest that's going to happen in my streets. So there's fear about being out and about whenever that happens, which can't be predicted when. So there was all those anger and just devastation, and fear was definitely one that was up there, unfortunately, which just really sucked. That things about feeling safe as a woman, period,
Already hard.
And being that they are currently amplified has been really difficult and a struggle to just take in, really.
I absolutely concur. And I feel like a lot is going to be affected. A lot is on the line with this next administration. And obviously, we can't go into every single topic because not all of it even pertains to us. And I feel like people who are being affected can use their platforms to speak on those things, and should. One of the positives, I would say, that came out of this is the sense of community that we've seen, especially on social media, specifically with women.
Yes.
And this concept of feminine rage. What do you think about that, or how have you been seeing it in social media?
It was interesting because we all had our own private moments to react and feel all of the emotions that we were feeling. So it was actually encouraging because obviously, what did we want to do? We wanted to disassociate. So most of us
Yeah.
ran to social media. A lot of us ran to TikTok because TikTok is so mind numbing. You just scroll over and over. Thankfully, my algorithm was coming across over and over and over everyone putting like fully their emotions, what they were feeling. Some were crying, some were showing their anger, some were explaining their fears, some were reacting to the opposing side's reaction. It was definitely, and honestly 95% of what I saw were women, and
Mm-hmm.
they were all sharing how they were feeling, and suddenly it was like, okay, so everything I'm worried about, everything I'm scared, everything I'm angry about, like, feels justified because there's a mass amount of other women who feel the same thing too. I think subconsciously we all started creating little community, building
Mm-hmm.
community within each other of other like-minded people. And then as the days went on, you were seeing a lot of people, celebrities, other maybe government officials out there talking about this is a time to try to find community to
Mm-hmm.
get through this together. So that was actually very interesting to see. Hence, we titled this Feminine Rage Heard Around the World, because
Yes.
literally it was starting to bubble as a whole. And not just from people in this country, people
Mm-hmm.
from around the world were reacting with us, empathizing and commiserating and feeling the same frustration and anger for us over here. So that was very
I
interesting.
I totally agree. I don't know if you saw, there's a video that was circulating around Instagram. I'm sure it was on TikTok too. I'm not on TikTok currently. We will be with the Perpetually Overdue
Yes.
podcast, but usually I get everything like second, third hand because it eventually filters into Instagram.
Yes.
But I was seeing this video of a bunch of women from around the world saying that they were standing with women in America
Mm.
after the election. I saw that video circulating. I don't know if it was created after the election or if it was created after Roe versus Wade was overturned.
Mm.
But just seeing that and seeing these powerful women who were in different parliaments around the world saying that they were standing with us was such a moving thing. And for me, I don't think that I've ever had this sense of online community
Mm.
ever before. You're the one that actually told me to get on Threads.
Mm-hmm.
And then after I did, I started seeing a bunch of women talking about what they're feeling, a bunch of buzzwords being thrown around, including feminine rage.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't think I've ever had a community or a social media app that I could go onto and immediately feel connected and immediately feel like I can relate to everybody that's on my feed and what they're talking about. And
Mm-hmm.
that was such a huge comfort. But
Yes.
to get into a little bit of the background of feminine rage, it's not a new concept, as you
No.
know. We've definitely heard about it before. I remember you mentioning a time to me hearing about feminine rage or seeing that enacted during Taylor Swift's Eras tour.
Yes. Okay. So actually, depending on what you believe, I believe that the universe is doing stuff behind the scenes. And I find it very interesting. Yes. I find it very interesting how it just so happened that this was happening at least 6 months prior to this moment. If you don't know, Taylor Swift had released her latest album, which is the Tortured Poets Department, a little nod to the Dead Poets Society. So, in that, she experienced a very short, volatile relationship, and apparently, a lot of the songs that came out of that and went into the album were based on that very brief, volatile relationship. So, interesting enough, it was more the imagery that was being
Mm.
set during her Eras tour when she added the new album as part of the set. There was an amazing image that was taken, and they ended up reaching out to the photographer and like make it official because the image was just so perfectly descriptive of feminine rage.
Mm-hmm.
It was very empowering. There was anger behind it. The wind was blowing. I mean, it's a pretty spectacular still shot. So she actually, with the fans, started coining the whole female rage, the musical, to the point that I think because they started coining that, allegedly, I don't know if this is facts, I think that she may have trademarked it to turn it into something later because it became such a
Oh.
thing. It became such a thing where everyone latched on to, like, yes, female rage, like we're embracing this concept, but of course they're embracing it as being done wrong by men or people or significant others. That was their version of it. Fast forward 6 to 8 months, we have November 2024. The buzzword was already kind of in the air.
Mm-hmm.
And here comes now this moment in history for the United States where women around the nation are now feeling rage. It's very complex and unique to each person, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
So that's kind of like what I found interesting, just how, like, that kind of like it was a prelude leading up to this.
Now, I haven't seen this image and I definitely want to, but the idea of feminine rage has been a concept from centuries and centuries back. I mean, even in the United States alone, we've had our waves of feminism and outrage about women's issues, about equality, about violence towards women, various issues to deal with institutions like the patriarchy. If we want to make a comprehensive definition of feminine rage, what would you say that that is?
I would say that we can describe feminine rage as an ancestral and inherited response to gender based oppression via
Mm-hmm.
established institutions like the patriarchy. Here's the thing, we did research, and there wasn't any specific person in history that we can pinpoint and say this person coined feminine rage. But we do know that the overall concept of feminine rage has been embraced for centuries back. One of the first instances of a woman embracing her feminine rage in a pamphlet that was called Protection for Women was Jane Anger, the last name.
Very appropriate last name.
Right? And this was in the 16th century, guys. Way
Okay.
back when. So, in this pamphlet, she actually criticized men for their harmful stereotypes of women and their ignorance. Now, imagine 16th century, the patriarchy was full blown,
Mm-hmm.
especially back then. So, for a woman to come out and publicly put out a pamphlet
Right.
and criticizing men for their actions towards women, that was a bold move for
Oh,
sure.
yeah. I love looking at history in general, especially learning about very strong female icons throughout history because the stories are never what you were told when you were a kid. They're so much juicier than what you may have heard. And that has to do with a lot of revision history and a lot of the credit of what women do being given to men. But I love the Jane Anger story or example, and we have some more examples in our research. There were some really fun stories that came up, and fun in the sense of it feels empowering and emboldening to see women stand up in their feminine rage and take action. And
Mm.
so there were three in particular that I came across that I really wanted to share. One being a 14-year-old girl named Freddie Oversteigen, who joined the Dutch resistance against the Nazis. And initially, her role was just to hand out anti Nazi pamphlets.
Mm.
But eventually, that role evolved. She got more and more involved in this organization. She was credited for doing things like burning down a Nazi warehouse. And along with some other women that were part of this resistance, leading Nazi soldiers into the woods essentially to their death. That was one example of a woman who, even though what was happening in Germany at the time didn't directly impact her in the sense that she was
Mm-hmm.
not Jewish, however, she saw an injustice and she did something about it, and that is really inspirational.
Yes.
Another example was a little further back in the 15th century. There was a Somalian queen self-proclaimed in a way. Basically, her father didn't have any male heirs, and usually, typically, a title or a throne would be passed down to a male, and she was the eldest daughter. Her name is Arawello. Essentially, she was about that life from the very beginning and was like, I'm going to be queen. There's no males around to take this from me. But she very much believed in exactly. She very much believed
Period.
in women being educated, one, and women being able to participate in male dominated activities. And at the time, it was stuff like hunting that she was
Mm.
referring to. So when she did come into power, she put women in positions of power in politics, which then meant that the men that they were partnered with were doing a lot of the domestic work that women used to do. So, very much gender reversal.
Mm.
My favorite thing that she did, because she did take it a little bit too far in terms of wanting to oppress men, which is not what we're about. But one of the things that she did was the punishment that she enacted for rapists, which was to hang them by their testicles. Let's just do snaps for that. I love it. And then finally, a more modern movement, because a lot of these examples are really old and not of our generation, is the 4B movement in South
Mm-hmm.
Korea. I don't know if you've heard of this, but this started in 2010, about the mid 2010s.
Mm.
It was in response to a lot of violence towards women and a lot of inequity within
Mm.
their society. The premise of the movement, which started online, which I feel like a lot of movements nowadays get their beginning online,
Pretty much.
was to reject a lot of the association with men. So that means marriage, childbearing, dating, and sex.
Mm.
And it did have an impact on that society, according to the International Affairs Review. Since the inception of that movement, the birth rate in South Korea has dropped a little bit. So things are definitely
Mm.
happening. But since this election, we've heard a lot more about the 4B movement because women in America are now wanting their own movement in
Mm-hmm.
response to the election and to seeing so many people okay with women's rights being taken away. So that brings us to how we feel about this whole thing personally. We've talked a little bit about it in the beginning, but I definitely think that we can go more in depth into that and then
Mm.
just, talk about what we hope to see come out of this. So, what is your personal relationship with feminine rage? How did it come about in you?
Hmm. Okay, so this is gonna have to be like a long story short scenario because I want to explain a different time in history that wasn't that long
Mhm.
ago compared to my reaction now, which definitely evolved. So I don't know if you remember around Obama's presidency, there
Mhm.
was a time on social media where the concept of feminism, which obviously isn't new, came into the scene and there was a big stir about it. Everyone was suddenly talking about what is feminism, what does it mean to be a feminist. People were arguing amongst themselves about the definition of feminism. There was a lot of dispute and back and forth, and also a lot of good conversation that was brought up
Mhm.
because feminism was really put into the forefront for discussion. I remember personally at that time, I took a more quiet stance
Mhm.
during all that. I had many thoughts that I felt were complex, and I knew that it would inspire arguments with people.
Mm.
And at that time, I didn't feel like that was something I wanted to choose to partake in. So I very much kind of like went more behind the scenes about it
Mhm.
because, again, like it was a small people group that were claiming or defining feminism as men bashing and men hating. And
Mhm.
so I was like, I don't even want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. I, again, just felt like that wasn't my place. And so I was not very open during that time. As some
Mhm.
people felt more confident or like it was something they wanted to really put out there with their full chest, which was awesome. I just didn't feel like I wanted to. And there was a struggle with that because honestly, I felt like there would have been a little like shame, like would have been put on
Mm,
me if people
mm-hmm.
like realized I was taking a quieter stance on that. Fast forward 2024 and the election, it was very interesting because, as with you, of course, feminine rage, like there's been aspects of it throughout my whole life because you're a woman. And when I was younger,
Mm-hmm.
I developed way too early physically. So men were complimenting me to my mother at like 12 years old because I had like a 16-year-old body.
That's disgusting.
I had experiences like most women with men in a
Mm-hmm.
not favorable circumstance. So there are those moments, but you don't even think about them because sadly, you think this is just what it is to be a woman, right?
Yeah.
Now talking about November when this happened and I was feeling the anger, the disappointment. I felt feminine rage at a level I've never felt before. This was the first time I genuinely felt this like burning in my
Mm,
gut, in my soul. I sobbed the night of at like 5:30 in the morning, like it all hit me and I sobbed and I almost did what everyone else did, which was make a recording of it and put it on TikTok, but I didn't end up doing that, thankfully. It's because you were desperate to let it out. It was like this
mm-hmm.
need to be heard and be understood and recognized that this was wrong. This is
Mm,
not okay.
yeah.
And so I definitely felt heightened emotions than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
In all the times where feminine rage definitely had pockets of time in my
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, but none like this so far. Definitely
Yeah.
none like this.
I would agree. I think just to touch on a couple of things that you said. One, I do think that we are conditioned from an early age, and so much more so if you end up in any sort of religious setting, that women are responsible to take care of men in every way, even their purity, which is complete bullshit. But it's
Yes.
something that we are so inundated with everywhere in media, in our homes, in our churches, in our schools. There is always this sense of pressure and responsibility that are placed on women's bodies, almost to the point of feeling ashamed about our bodies, wanting to cover up, wanting to be less visible, wanting to shrink back, which is not something that we should ever have to do as women. And then on top of that, just the general putting of our needs aside to take care of other people because we are the nurturers, we're the
Mm-hmm.
caregivers. For me, feminine rage has always, like you, been a visceral part of my life. I think in a probably in a more intense way because I just sort of like knew myself from very early on in the sense of I never can keep my mouth shut. I'm very outspoken, and so are you.
But I am
But
more like not placating, but
you're just less confrontational than I
I
am.
am less confrontational. I am.
Yeah, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But because I am more confrontational,
Which also there's
because
nothing wrong with. Both.
yes, absolutely, I have been vocal throughout my life about social justice, women's rights, the rights of people of color, racism, different things that I have personal firsthand experience with. I definitely have felt this level of feminine rage before, but I've never felt it collectively with so many
Mm.
other women. It
Mm-hmm.
feels more powerful, honestly,
Yes.
to get onto social media because I mean, I unfortunately don't have a lot of these women in my vicinity, which is something that I want to change. I definitely want to
Mm.
have more in person community. But right
Mm.
now, that's just not a possibility. So for me, getting onto social media on threads in particular and seeing so many women reaching out to other women, seeing so many women wanting to connect with like minded women who care about their rights and the rights of other people, it's super empowering and it actually fuels that feminine rage within me to know,
Mm.
okay, this is not an isolated incident that is only happening to me. This is all of us. We are all in this same boat together, even the women who voted against their own interests. We're all in
Mm.
this boat together. We're all experiencing it together. We're all affected by it. And for the first time, I'm not going to say ever, because there's always been pockets and people who
Mm.
have been outspoken. I feel like it's the first time that it feels like everybody's talking about it. It feels like
Mm-hmm.
the topic of the hour right now.
Yes. At least for the first time in our adult life.
Yes, because obviously we know feminism has been around for a long time and we've
Mm-hmm.
gone through different waves of it. And there's a lot of different perspectives. And that was another thing that you mentioned, saying the different definitions of it. And I would be lying if I said that there wasn't a small pocket of self proclaimed feminists who don't want male participation within feminism. There is a lot of animosity there, and it doesn't come from nowhere.
No.
Obviously,
Yeah.
women have been dealing with the male gaze their whole life. They've been dealing with being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
so on and so forth, and dealing with the opinions of men and how we should live, what we should look like, and what we should do with our bodies. Through various points of history, women have been fed up with it and have vocalized it, which is why we have the Jane Angers of the world.
Yes.
Because of social media, we're just in such a unique time in history. We're
Mm-hmm.
now seeing all of these women at the same time, and they're all getting together and commiserating. And I think that that's super beautiful.
Yes.
And for me, in my own feminine rage, it makes me feel like I have a home in it. It
Mm.
makes me feel like, oh, I don't have to move on from this so
Mm.
quickly. Because for us as women, life has to go on, right? Like, we can't just sit in that anger 24/7.
Yeah. In the long run, it's not healthy mentally, physically, emotionally to sit in that literally day in and day out. But there's a healthy way to have it in your mind or in the back of your mind. Like, it's not something you're forgetting, it's not something you're letting go. It's
Mm-hmm.
just a matter of, okay, this is our reality.
Mm-hmm.
For the moment, yes, we still have to do life, but there's also an awareness now as I do life. And so now our actions, our speech, everything is more intentional as we move forward. Having the anger, there's healthy anger. Anger is not a bad emotion,
No.
by the way. Anger is an emotion that is valid and should be felt when it's happening. It's a
Mm-hmm.
matter of what you do with it and whether you let it linger so that it can fester into something volatile or negative. That's what we don't want. But
Mm-hmm.
feeling anger, there's nothing wrong with that. And the fact is, we can still be angry and we
Mm-hmm.
can still be disappointed and we can still be a little fearful, but we're not living in those emotions. We're just
Mm-hmm.
keeping them in our awareness as we move forward.
I agree. I would even venture to say that anger is needed. A lot of the time, when massive change happens, when revolutions happen, it's when people have reached that peak point of anger. And I would say one of my favorite things that has come out of this current wave of feminine rage is the I'm done. The I'm
Yes.
doneness of it all. It's just a new word I just made up on the spot, but it's that feeling of I don't have to give any explanations. I don't have
Yes.
to get any validation. I'm going to sit back. I did what I needed to do. I was on the right side of history, and now I'm going to do me and worry about me. And I think that that is so needed right now, especially in a society that's constantly telling women, put your partner first, put your children first, put your career first, put all of these things ahead of you and
Mm-hmm.
your self-care and your self-worth. So that's been my favorite thing. Do you have a favorite thing that's come out of this?
It's exactly that. And that's in part why I think adopting the 4B movement now for us here, those choosing to do so, is actually brilliant because it is saying, I'm going to sit back and I'm going to focus on me. I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
take care of me. I am going to prepare and do the things needed for me. Things are going to unfold as they unfold, but I am going to make sure that I and those I love who
Mm-hmm.
are with me and the community now that I will build within
Mm-hmm.
this, we're going to take care of me, each other, because whatever dominoes and chips that fall as they may,
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like we're choosing not to let the other side, the opposing
Mm-hmm.
side, wants you to react and do certain things
Mm-hmm.
for reactions. And we're going, no, we're not playing your game. We're actually going to be
Mm-hmm.
very peaceful. We're going to sit back, which probably is going to really rub you the wrong way, but
Yes.
we're not giving you what you want. We're
Mm-hmm.
taking care of us, ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to put ourselves first. You're not going to like it, but you know what? We don't give a fuck. Like,
Yes.
we're at the point where, like you said, done. That's been my favorite part, because it's not even just we're angry, we're upset, this is wrong. It's like, okay, you did what you did. And that's why I love the whole fuck around and find out that's
Mm-hmm.
going around. Like, it's an era now we're entering. And it's kind of like, while that's happening, girl, I got my popcorn, I got my wine, I'm in my
Mm-hmm.
comfy, fuzzy slippers. Like, I am not going to be bothered.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-mm.
I'll
You're not,
do it
you're not
again.
stealing my peace. You're not stealing my peace. And that's been my favorite part about all this.
Now, I want to talk about one thing that, for those of you who are listening and for those of you who are watching, she is not prepared. We did not talk about this ahead of time, but I do think it's really poignant. But first, I want to say, did you see a couple of videos of conservative or Southern women who were like, oh, the liberals are going to come after us now and jump us? We'll be ready. Have you seen that?
I think this was already when I was weaning off and going, okay,
Mm,
I need to now take a step away. But I did come across a couple that were
yes.
saying something about, they were claiming that we were claiming we were going to come and beat them up. And I didn't
Yes.
give it enough time and look at them. I rolled my eyes and kept scrolling.
Yes.
But that's as far as I heard about it, because
Because,
it's
girl, nobody's
goodness.
talking about you.
No
Nobody is
one
thinking about you.
cares.
No one is going to try to jump you or go after you. It's that desperation to be relevant and almost, dare I say, the victim of,
Mm,
you
yes.
voted the way that you did, whether
Yep.
it was against your own self interest, that's irrelevant now.
Mm-hmm.
You got the outcome that you were looking for. The person that
Mm-hmm.
you voted for is going to be the next president of the United States. And you can't just shut the fuck up about it. You have to react to people's disappointment. You know what I mean? And it's so wild that the response to that, to what these women have put out there, has been like, we don't care about you. We're not thinking
No,
about you.
we're not going to give you our
We
time
No, we have no energy to give. We have no
at
energy to
all.
give you. We have no more energy to give anybody.
Nope.
That is the point. That's the whole movement right there. We
Mm-hmm.
don't have it. We don't want to. Leave us alone. Let us
And
do us.
historically, who are the ones, when they're unhappy, they take it to the streets and harm people? It hasn't been us. Just saying. We haven't done any of that. So it's not in our MO. Two, I find it hilarious, like you said, to make it about themselves.
Mm,
It's like, dude, you won. Like, be happy,
yeah,
move
go
on.
and
But they
enjoy your
can't.
victory.
So apparently, when everyone has gone up to them, or on social media has gone like, "I hope you get everything you voted for," gasp, insult. What do you mean? It's like, I hope you get everything you voted for. They become so upset that we've insulted them. It's like, I hope you get everything you voted for. You won. You're gonna get everything you voted for. If
There's
you
a little spiciness to that because we know.
But the fact is, if they don't think there's any
No.
consequence, then why are they
Why be
reacting? What's the
why be
issue?
upset?
Why not go, thank you? I know I'm going to get what we voted for.
Look, girl, I've already decided that when shit goes down, it's already going down, but when shit
Yeah,
goes down and people start to wake up to what's going on, which people already are, because after the election, the most Googled search was, can I change my vote?
that's
And
fucking
among other
hilarious.
things that probably should have been looked up before the
Before,
election.
but
Yeah, like what's a tariff? What does the Department of Education do? But when the regret starts kicking in, if it does, it might not happen for
there are
everybody.
some who sadly really, yeah, won't.
Yeah.
That's
But when
something I
that
have
happens,
accepted.
my go-to response, I have decided, is going to be thoughts and prayers.
I've already
Thoughts and
seen some
prayers
of
to you.
those online. I know. I've yes.
Thoughts and prayers. I'm really thinking of you. There I go. two
Oh
second
my
prayer
god.
just for you.
Did you ever watch Queen Charlotte on
No.
Netflix?
Oh, just like little bits and pieces.
Oh my god, that's the best one. But the funniest thing that people have been quoting near the end of the season, when like they're showing more of her queendom age, her thing is prayers, prayers, sorrows, sorrows. Like anyone who was distraught, her children were coming to her crying, and she's so stoic. Like I don't deal with emotions, so she was just like prayers, prayers, sorrows, sorrows, and then
Yes,
moving.
yes.
So people have been putting under different comments and things. They're like prayers,
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 sorrows,
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 sorrows. I
which is
love that.
basically thoughts and prayers,
Oh,
same
yeah.
concept.
Yes,
It's
it's the thoughts
glorious.
and prayers of the time.
Yes, it was.
Okay, so the poignant thing that I wanted to bring up was how feminine rage is partially about just being done, just like I'm going to take care of myself, I'm going to do my own thing. I can't be bothered, especially among women of color, specifically
Mm-hmm.
Black women.
Yes.
92%. Let's just
Yeah.
get there. 92%. So don't want to be bothered, and no one can blame.
They fought. They have put their time and sweat
Yes.
and literal blood.
Again, right side of history. Really, nobody owes anybody anything, but especially Black women right now do not owe anybody shit. So
Here, here.
that feeling of I'm going to take care of myself, I'm going to do my own thing, and we're going to get a little bit metaphysical right now. We're about to enter into the Age of Aquarius, and what is one of the things that you actually told me about, that this time is going to be about self-care and all of that stuff.
Yeah, there's a little controversy between the astrological community because just to put this out there before anybody wants to come at the comments and be like,
Yeah.
yes, there is an Age of Aquarius that is a greater time told that is of the future. I get it. But we can't deny that the next 20 years is an age of Aquarius that we are literally stepping into. So if you guys want to call it Aquarius era, whatever, let's not get tripped up on the language, guys. The point
Yeah.
is that for those who do understand that astrologically Pluto has gone into Aquarius, that hasn't happened in over 200 years. And when it first happened, there was huge shifts in the world. And we'll get into that in a different episode.
Totally.
But we have just entered that now, and it's going to affect us for the next 20 years. And in preparation for it, there was a full moon earlier this month. And that full moon was very much about self care because of things that were going to get riled up, things that were going to crumble, things that were going to create a lot of heightened emotions. We were being called to take the time and really focus on you, focus on the things that make you happy, give you peace, give you comfort, because that is the inner strength we need for the times to come. And so, as Heather was saying, as we enter this little Aquarius era of the next 20 years, because of what it represents and the things it's going to do, our goal and role in this, especially in the beginning, is, as she said, self care. Figure out who you are, figure out what you want, figure out who you want to be, and be unapologetic about it, and just find what brings you peace and sit in that place. And like we were saying, you can still carry the anger, the fears, the disappointments. You're just not living in them 24/7. You keep them on the shelf. You're aware of them in your existence. But at the end of the day, we're still taking care of ourselves first. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, vital, especially in this time and what's happening just energetically right now in the world, in our country, and in women.
Yeah, I totally 100% agree. Thank you for sharing that. We've talked about this a little bit just personally, but we have felt that individually. When the election happened, my first instinct was like, I need to find a local advocacy group. I need to do something or find an outlet for this feminine rage, which I 100% agree with and think that there are many avenues for it. But my heart was telling me, hey, before this all happened, you were on a healing journey from religion specifically, which we'll get into in a different episode. But you need to stay on that path. You need to think about you now and your healing and what's going on internally. And it felt almost like an outer body experience where I'm like, what is happening? Why is my brain and my heart pulling me in this direction when I need to be going in this direction? And I didn't really understand. I just sort of kept it to myself. I didn't really understand what was happening. And then you told me about the era of Aquarius.
Mm-hmm.
Because I like to be controversial, I'm going to say the Age of Aquarius.
I love it because it's still an age. Fine, it's not the Age of Aquarius, but it's an age. So I'm still going to call it Age of Aquarius too.
Semantics. But yeah, when you told me about that, I was like, oh, wow. It felt very affirming to hear that. And I'm sure it'll feel very affirming for a lot of people to hear. I know that the instinct, like the knee jerk reaction, is to go out, protest, do things, and organize. And we should do those things. But not at the sacrifice of ourselves. Because I think, again, we talked about how difficult it is for women to put their needs first because we've just been historically conditioned to not do that. Yep. But then on top of that, when you have something that you're super passionate about and it's a movement, you have to be involved and you give your blood, sweat, and tears to it, the temptation, again, is to lose yourself into that as well. And I think what's unique about this is it's that passion mixed with self-love, self-care, and those two things have to coexist at like equal levels in order for this to really be successful. And at the end of it, we come out on the other side not feeling drained, not feeling like we have nothing else to give, burnt out, but we are standing in our divine feminine, which is not a gender thing, but we all have divine feminine and divine masculine, but we're standing in our divine feminine and we're okay. Our hearts are okay. You know, our bodies are good.
And the thing is, you guys, because you don't know us yet, but Heather specifically, for her, that struggle she talked about, she was literally made for social justice. Like, that has been her passion. That is something that's always come very natural to her. I've always envied how well she just acclimated herself to any type of social justice issue. So for her, it made sense that her instinct was like, okay, let's find now all the practical things to participate in. So it is huge that her spirit and her soul basically were telling her that's not the move right now. And I was excited because I was feeling what I was feeling and I wanted to share it with her so bad. And when we talked, she told me what she had felt. And I was like, oh my God, it already happened for you. Like,
we're there.
It was amazing to be like, oh my God, we're on the same wavelength. It's glorious. And that's what I think has been very interesting as well. Because when it comes to times in history where feminine rage was enacted, we hear about the demonstrations and all those things. This is interesting because there seems to be a general consensus that, at least for right now, it's not to externally go balls to the wall. It's more of, okay, this doneness you're feeling is actually a good thing because it's keeping you settled and it's keeping you focused on taking care of you.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about what we hope to see come out of this, because right now we're living in a very self-focused, in a good way, self-care and healing time, getting ourselves right, taking care of ourselves, taking care of our bodies, our minds, our spirits, our souls, all of that. In the future, whether that be the near or distant future, what are you hoping to see come out of this movement of feminine rage?
It's interesting because if you think about it, this time of, let's say, self-care, it is happening in a time where technically the next administration hasn't taken over yet. Right. So we're at kind of like a shadow period before it happens, where I think is why it's prime opportunity to not just that we're taking care of ourselves, emotionally, physically, like all those things, but we're also doing it practically in the sense of some women are going out and getting a bunch of Plan B pills that they can store
Mhm.
up for a time, because I think they don't expire for like 4 years or something. Some women are getting as much birth control as they can in advance. Some women are learning self defense. Some women are getting their license to conceal weapons. I mean,
Mhm.
there are practical things that people are also doing in preparation. It's hard because come January, we have no idea what things are going to look like for the
No.
next like year, at least just the
Mhm.
first year. We don't
Mhm.
know the repercussions. We don't know the domino effects. We don't know what's going to happen and what's going to be required of us individually and as communities.
Mhm.
So it's hard to say what I hope, because I can hope a lot of things. I can hope somehow that this whole thing gets dismantled. I can hope that like secret agents come in and dismantle the
Mm.
administration by finding all of the illegal and fun dirty laundry secrets that many of them have. There's a lot of things I could hope for. So it's hard to really kind of like pinpoint. I guess in the big scheme of things, I hope that as we move forward as a community of not just women, but minorities and those in like
Mhm.
the queer communities, I hope that we stay strong in banding together,
Mhm.
because in the end, I hope that we don't get tripped up on little things to cause division, because this is
Mhm.
not the time for that. So
Mhm.
I hope that we can all put that aside and come together, strengthen numbers, and as things unfold, that we can find safe places to be and to go
Mhm.
to as they happen. That's the generic, simple overall hope. There are a lot of more specific hopes that I have, but
Yeah,
it's hard to really say right now, at least for me.
that's fair. I think for me, my hope is very general as well. Like, obviously, I hope that reproductive rights will be restored. I hope
Mm,
that legislation will be put in place to protect marginalized groups of people who are actively being railed against, ones that are being villainized with no evidence whatsoever to back up a lot of the misinformation that is out there. I can say all of that, and I do hope that all of that does come to pass. I think for feminine rage specifically, I want to see the fire continue to burn. If I had
mm,
one wish or one thing that I could be granted, it would be that the fire would continue to burn, because we as humans are really created to just move forward,
adapt.
like adapt. Life has to go on. I don't want to adapt to
Mm, mm,
injustice. I don't want
mm.
to adapt to my rights being stripped away. I don't want to adapt to racism and white supremacy and the patriarchy. Like, those are systems that need to be dismantled, period,
Yes.
point. And so the fire that is feminine rage within us, I want that to continue to burn. And I want people to find their unique outlets for it, because
Mm,
there are so many. Art is a huge one,
yes.
writing,
Yes.
painting, drawing, so many, music. And we've
Mm-hmm.
already seen a lot of it with music. Those are very much needed. I think art and protests and advocacy, they all go hand in hand. In addition to obviously boots on the ground and
Mm-hmm.
people organizing and people protesting and people voting in their local
Yes.
elections. Right now, a lot of things are going to the states, and we need people to show up, when each state is having their local elections, and to pick the best candidate to support your rights.
Yes.
I know that's hard. I say that as somebody who is like, I know it's flawed. I know it's not easy. And I know a lot of the issues that people have been vocalizing. But now is not the time to sit out, in my opinion. This
Mm.
is my opinion. It's not the time to sit out on voting. I support people voting their conscience, but I also think that people need to be mindful of what their inaction does and the consequences of it. And also just find your personal outlet, because if you cannot release that feminine rage, it'll just
Mm.
fester and it'll
Yes.
become something ugly. And we don't want
It
that.
will.
We want it to empower us, not
Yes.
take away from us.
Exactly. That is something I do also hope for, is that, as at least when it comes to feminine rage, women will hold to their convictions that they feel
Mm,
strongly about now. It can be done in so
mm-hmm.
many ways. You can stay home and get on TikTok live, and there's your platform to say or do something. Like, there are so many avenues out there thanks
Yeah.
to the internet, honestly. And like she said, art throughout history has always been synonymous with change and protest and revolutions. There are so many art forms to take on. This is definitely a why does that word feel wrong every time?
No,
Is it
you
right?
said it correctly.
Oh my god, when you say a word and suddenly it doesn't sound right anymore?
We're keeping that in.
Yes. So this is a pivotal time in history
Mm-hmm.
where this isn't 2016 all over
No.
again, guys. That's a really poor argument. This is very different. And this will have consequences to our livelihood in ways far greater than 2016. So this is
Mm-hmm.
the time where what we influence change wise will determine the next maybe 10 years of our lives. And it can either go one way or the other. And we really, really, really don't want it to go one way. Even those who voted for him, who think that's what they want, really, really don't want it to end up going that way. So we
Well,
have to
some of them
definitely,
do.
well, no, some of them think they do, but they don't realize that certain freedoms that they just don't even consciously think about were allotted to them because of a liberal minded person. But that's a whole discussion for another time.
Yeah.
Definitely, as Heather said, like, let's not let that fire go out, because this is an important time in history that's going to determine what the future, for those who do have children, what the future for your children are going to look like.
With that being said, we definitely want to start a discussion on Instagram, on Threads, on YouTube. If you find us, our social medias will be linked
Everywhere, somewhere.
everywhere. Look at the description boxes for all of that. But we want to start a discussion about this topic. For
Yes.
those who are feeling the feminine rage right now, what is your outlet? How are you taking action, or how do you intend on taking action? We want to start that discussion not only to hear different perspectives, but for us to find each other and to find
Yes.
community. We'll be participating in those discussions as well, because we definitely want to hear from you, and we want to gain new perspective and new ideas of maybe things that we didn't even think about ourselves. And this is the beauty of community and the collective, is that we expand our knowledge and understanding by having these conversations with each other. But whew, that was a heavy
That
episode. We
was
know.
episode 1. We brought it to you. We went full in, guys. This was important to discuss early on.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought episode 1 of this brand new podcast, this is still a very relevant, still a very raw subject that we felt passionate and we're eager to not just talk about with each other, but to talk about with you guys and connect with you guys.
And not only relevant to the time right now, but it's important to us. And we're not a small talky type of people. We like to get into the deep crevices of people's psyche, of their souls and their hearts. So even though a lot of the topics that we want to talk about on this podcast are a little bit on the serious side, we will for sure have a lot of what we refer to as palate cleansers in the future.
Yes.
We'll get to take a break. We'll get to breathe a little bit. We'll get to gab. We'll get to shoot the shit and have some fun, and then get right back into the deep stuff.
Exactly. So we are very excited. I would say the two places to get into conversation with each other will be Instagram and YouTube comments. So you can find us in both of those. Please, please make sure that you are not only following us, that you subscribe to our YouTube, you subscribe to wherever it is that you listen to your podcast. Please leave us a review. That does wonders to help others find us, so that we can all come together like-minded, attracting like. So yeah, friends, we're really excited for this new endeavor. We can't wait to connect with you guys.
Thank you for listening to our first episode. We were so grateful. And like she said, like, comment, subscribe, repost, do all the things, but most importantly, connect with us, because that's what we care about the most.
Yes.
We don't care about going viral or doing any of those things. We just care about connecting. And if we have 2 listeners, we'll be happy. But thank you again, and we'll see you next time.